Hello, this is Jackie Cohen, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Monday, June 8th issue of the Democrat Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. It's a World Cup party, where to watch all the soccer action in the Rochester area. The FIFA World Cup will run from June 11th through July 19th, with the United States, Mexico, and Canada serving as co-hosts for the world's biggest men's soccer tournament. With 48 teams competing, it will feature 104 matches over 39 days. Joe McBain, owner of the Sheffield, an English pub near Brighton's 12 Corners, is excited about the prospect of noon-to-night football, as they call it in his native England, for over a month. It's going to be terrific, he said. One of his fondest memories of hosting international soccer fans dates back to when he owned the South Wedges beer bar, Tap and Mallet. He arrived at work one day to find taxicabs wrapped around the building. It turned out that the drivers were from North Africa and had descended upon a bar to take in a match. He also has fond memories of Brazilian and Dutch fans visiting the pub. The Sheffield now is a destination for soccer fans, particularly for England and United States games. It's always like the best atmosphere, he said. We can't wait. It's going to be a ton of fun. Here are some of the bars that will be showing World Cup matches in the Rochester area. The Sheffield, 1776 Monroe Ave in Brighton, will be open for every game with the exception of Mondays when the bar is closed. A massive new TV has been installed in the dining room to accommodate sports fans, McBain said. The sound will be cranked for the game and there will be beer sponsorships and prizes. SheffieldTavern.com. The Boot Room Pub. If the game is on, we will be open, said Dan Zambito, co-owner of the Boot Room Pub, a soccer-themed bar at 198 North Winton Road. That means its usual hours will be extended during the tournament. FIFA World Cup matches will bring $3 Stella and Michelob Ultra drafts during every game. Buckets of regular and vodka-based seltzers will be $17. Whispering Angel Rose wine will be served at $6 per glass during games. BootRoomPub.com. Parlay's Inn. Parlay's Inn, 250 Monroe Ave in Rochester, will expand its usual hours to show all the World Cup matches, and the sound will be played for every U.S. game, said co-owner Joe Joy. Anytime a game kicks off at noon, we'll be open, he said. Drink specials will include $12 domestic pitchers and bucket specials as well. ParlaysInn.com. TC Hooligans. TC Hooligans, 200 Center Place Drive in Greece, will be showing all of the World Cup matches. It has 61 televisions throughout its restaurant and patios. The sound will be on for the U.S. matches on June 12th, 19th, and 25th. It will have watch parties for U.S. and other major matches. During games, it will offer bucket specials, themed drink specials, and food specials and giveaways. TCHooligansGreece.com. The Distillery. All 3 locations of the Distillery will be showing the World Cup matches, and the sound will be on for all U.S. games. Its hours will be extended for U.S. matches, and it will remain open for other matches based on customer demand. During the games, it will have prize giveaways and food and drink specials. All locations have televisions on their patios for outdoor viewing. The Distillery has locations at 1142 Mount Hope Ave in Rochester, 3010 South Winton Road in Henrietta, and 10 Square Drive in Victor. TheDistillery.com. Magpie Irish Pub. Magpie Irish Pub, 653 Park Avenue, will be open for all games with drink specials throughout the tournament. MagpiePub.com. Webster Board removes Pride flag. Residents question vote with no prior notice. Residents gathered June 5th holding pride flags and signs as a pride flag was removed from Webster Town Hall following a town board vote not listed on the agenda. It was the end of a short-lived stay for the pride flag, which was raised by Town Supervisor Alex Scialdoni on June 1st. The town board, by a 3-2 vote on June 4th, elected to remove any flags from town property that were not the national, state, or town flags. For Brittany Bonanno, the removal of the pride flag marked an exceptionally sad day, with so much community support for its presence. Bonanno is raising 3 teenagers in Webster with her wife and worries about the impact of the flag removal and what it represents to families in town. The bigger concern here is the safety of our children, and if they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't think their families belong here, Bonanno said. The votes not being on the meeting agenda and passing with little discussion rankled Bonanno. Council members John Cahill, Jennifer Wright, and Garrett Wagner voted in favor of the resolution limiting the flags that can fly on town property. I don't think they had any energy to hear any of the support that went on for a long time last night. People who never came out and people who don't speak up came out last night, and it fell on deaf ears, and it's really frustrating because they're elected officials representing the town, Bonanno said. Residents and officials clash over decision. Wright attended the flag removal on June 5th. She said she found division in the community, both online and in person, once the flag was raised and it was announced on social media. I knew this was going to happen before it happened, and I actually reached out to the supervisor and explained that our job as government officials is to govern the town, and taking actions that are more social in nature creates a divide that is unnecessary and unproductive, she said. As soon as the post went up and the flag went up, the divide was immediate, and it was very negative, and it was very sad. Pride flag raised days earlier, then removed. The town's Facebook post of the pride flag raising did draw a big reaction online. The post received 1,200 likes, 1,000 loves, 92 laughs, and 58 angry reactions. Scialdoni said he promised to raise the pride flag when he ran for office in 2025, earning his first term as supervisor. He said throughout his life, terms like gay were used in a derogatory way, and that he was guilty of doing so when he was a child. As we grow and we learn that that is used to demonize a specific group of people, we move forward, and I want to show people that we're here to lead with love and acceptance. This was vitally important to me to at least show this community that they are seen and they are heard, Scialdoni said. The supervisor said fewer than 10 people called or emailed the town with complaints about the pride flag. He said he believed the move to vote on the town's flag policy, while not on the agenda, was pre-planned. I am discouraged by that, but I'm encouraged by the community, and I'm not going to stop fighting for them, Scialdoni said. I would love to see the flag raised again 100%. I will never stand down from that. New York expands access to universal pre-K. All 4-year-olds in New York will have access to universal pre-K by the start of the 2028-29 school year under increased state funding. The funding is part of the state's $4.5 billion investment in childcare and pre-K programs statewide, approved by the state legislature and Governor Kathy Hochul in the state budget on May 27th. The bill will make UPK programs available to all 4-year-olds in the state, launch pilot programs for 3-year-olds, help expand free childcare for 2-year-olds, and universal 3K access in New York City. The measure has been viewed as a lifeline for sustaining and creating UPK programs. Most programs rely heavily on state aid, with few districts supplementing the funding on their own. The projected funding increase has already prompted some districts to consider expanding their programs, while others are still weighing their options. School districts are still grappling with how to implement the policy shift. Major concerns include limited space, the cost of staffing, and the added administrative responsibilities that come with overseeing outside agencies. District leaders previously said one potential model would be to establish regional centers serving students from multiple districts. In brief, fire chief charged with DWI after responding to crash, deputies say. The West Bloomfield fire chief was charged with driving while intoxicated after allegedly responding to a crash while intoxicated June 4th, according to the Ontario County Sheriff's Office. Deputies were called at about 7:53 p.m. to a single vehicle rollover crash on State Routes 5 and 20 in the town of West Bloomfield. While investigating the crash, deputies determined that West Bloomfield Fire Chief Ronald Harold Smith had responded to the scene in his personal vehicle and appeared to be intoxicated, the sheriff's office said. Deputies conducted a roadside investigation and arrested Smith on charges of driving while intoxicated and consuming alcohol in a motor vehicle, authorities said. Smith was issued citations and is scheduled to appear in West Bloomfield Town Court at a later date. One dead after dump truck crashes into pickup. A 59-year-old person was killed June 5th as a dump truck crossed into the oncoming traffic and struck a pickup truck in Yates County, according to New York State Police. The crash occurred at about 11:39 a.m. on State Route 54 in the town of Torrey. State police said a 1999 Sterling dump truck, driven by a 38-year-old Penn Yan man, was traveling eastbound on Route 54 when it encountered a vehicle ahead attempting to make a left turn. According to the preliminary investigation, the dump truck driver braked abruptly. The turning vehicle accelerated and avoided a collision, but the dump truck was unable to maintain its lane, crossed into the westbound lane, and struck an oncoming 2015 Chevrolet Silverado. The 59-year-old driver, who was the sole occupant of the Silverado, died as a result of the crash. Police said the dump truck driver was ejected from the vehicle during the collision. He was taken by ambulance to Geneva General Hospital before being flown to Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester. Authorities said he suffered non-life-threatening injuries and remains hospitalized. A preliminary breath test administered to the driver yielded negative results, according to the state police. The investigation remains ongoing. Wegmans now offers free live ASL help in stores. Wegmans is now offering free access to live remote American Sign Language interpreters at its stores through the ERA ASL app, the company announced June 2nd. The company's partnership with ERA enables the grocery store chain to better serve deaf and hard-of-hearing customers by providing them with an innovative way to communicate with our employees more efficiently. Access partners including Wegmans pay for the service to be used for free by their customers. After downloading the app, users tap a button which starts a live video call with a professional ASL interpreter. The user signs to the interpreter, and the interpreter says the user's words out loud to a hearing person through the phone speaker. Since 2018, Wegmans has offered free use of the ERA Explorer app, which connects blind and low vision shoppers with live, remote visual interpreters to guide them through stores. Both ERA services are also available at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport. The Strong National Museum of Play offers ERA Explorer. Snakes important in Finger Lakes. New York State is home to 17 species of snakes, more than half of which can be found in the Finger Lakes region. Snakes play a critical role in their environments, primarily by their position within the food chain, as predators and within natural communities, according to the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Snakes, while effective predators of various pests, in turn feed other animals, including bird of prey like hawks, eagles, and owls, as well as mammals including foxes and raccoons, according to Britannica. New York's most common snakes reside in the Finger Lakes, as well as most other parts of the Empire State, the water snake and the garter snake. Both snakes are the most frequent and widely encountered snakes and are harmless to people, according to the State Department of Environmental Conservation. The garter snake lives in a wide variety of habitats, from woodlands to marshes to fields, and are variable in color and pattern, but are usually brown or green. Garter snakes typically grow up to 2 feet long. The water snake is found in and around nearly any water body or wetland in the state. It's up to 42 inches long and is typically dark-colored with lighter bands. These snakes are also found within the Finger Lakes region, according to the DEC. Northern coal skink, brown snake, red belly snake, ribbon snake, ringneck snake, black racer, smooth green snake, rat snake, milk snake, and timber rattlesnake. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat and Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. New museum exhibit honors Ontario County changemakers. Who knew that Henry W. Johnson, the first black attorney in Canandaigua, would move on from the Finger Lakes and start a coffee farm in the country of Liberia in West Africa? Did you know Eunice Foote, a 19th century scientist, women's rights campaigner, and inventor who grew up in Bloomfield and settled in Seneca Falls, was a published climate researcher way back when, but wasn't allowed to present her findings on scientific matters because she was a woman? Here's something else you may not have known. Alice M. Dubler, a nurse born in Manchester, who helped start the Manchester Health Center in 1923 and led the center for 50 years, for a time actually made house calls? Those are some of the local history tidbits visitors to the Ontario County Historical Society Museum's just opened America 250, Changemakers of Ontario County exhibit will be able to learn about the people who made history in local communities. The exhibit runs through December. The exhibit presents the stories of individuals, each suggested by local historians or historical societies of their towns, who have made significant contributions to their communities and beyond. Some go back to a community's earlier days. Others, as in the case of William Verheil, who owned Verheil's Appliances in Naples before it closed in 2014, and devoted local history advocate for years, are more recent community treasures. Museum curator Wilma Townsend said these people had different skills and abilities, but each gave back to their communities, either here or elsewhere, in their own ways. It's always surprising to me that these little towns have these people who have done a lot, or they have gone someplace else and done a lot, Townsend said. The Changemakers exhibit opening coincides with the Historical Society's Door to Western New York, a general history of Ontario County, which opened May 29th and will run indefinitely. Executive Director Ulana Fuller said the exhibit can be refreshed with new feature panels and artifacts and is designed to appeal to visitors of all ages, especially families. The exhibit reflects the work of staff, volunteers, and donors over 6 months, in addition to the day-to-day operations and programs. First, we wanted to create an exhibit that would answer the questions so many of our out-of-town visitors have, Fuller said. We also wanted to create an exhibit that our area residents could come back to again and again. $40 million available to train nuclear energy workers. New York plans to spend $40 million developing the next generation of nuclear workers. The New York Power Authority wants to hear from technical high schools, community colleges, universities, and others interested in training the workforce needed to fill jobs in the nuclear energy industry in the coming years. Last year, Governor Kathy Hochul announced plans to have NYPA develop 1 gigawatt of advanced nuclear energy upstate, enough to power roughly 1 million homes. 8 upstate communities and dozens of developers have already expressed interest. By taking a proactive approach, we are preparing our state to take advantage of the opportunities associated with advanced nuclear, which will provide round-the-clock, reliable, clean energy while cultivating the partnerships needed to bring the project from concept to concrete, Hochul said Monday, June 1st. Eligible training programs can apply to NYPA for the funding, which will be available over 4 years. Aside from school-based programs, funding will go to unions, trade associations, manufacturers, community organizations, and recognized Native American nations and tribal organizations. Money will cover training, hands-on experience, paid internships, as well as job placement in construction and operations roles. Also Monday, the state announced it's opening up the next phase of its upstate nuclear push by inviting developers to establish their qualifications and submit applications. The county's vying to host nuclear in New York. In January, the state announced that 23 developers, among them Constellation Energy, the company that operates 3 upstate nuclear plants, indicated they'd like to partner with NYPA to develop nuclear power. 6 counties, the city of Dunkirk, and a Rochester utility that supplies power to the Eastman Business Park, have expressed interest in hosting. These counties are Broome, Jefferson, Oswego, Schuyler, St. Lawrence, and Wayne. These solicitations will help NYPA establish the roadmap for deploying the first new nuclear facility in New York in a generation that will deliver the dependable, emissions-free power we will rely on for decades to come, said NYPA President and CEO Justin Driscoll. NYPA is partnering with Ontario Power Generation to develop the state-of-the-art nuclear generation needed to supply power to data centers and semiconductor manufacturers planned upstate. Hochul's embrace of nuclear power doesn't extend to the downstate region of the state. Last year, the governor, in a letter to Westchester County Executive Ken Jenkins, a fellow Democrat, dismissed talk of restarting the Indian Point nuclear power plant that shut down in 2021. Let me say this plainly, no, Hochul said. There have been no discussions or plans, and I would not support efforts to do so. Prison oversight, campaign AI use in election spotlight. A formerly incarcerated person was appointed to a state board that oversees conditions at New York's correctional facilities by the Senate last week, inciting outrage from Republican gubernatorial candidate Bruce Blakeman. Alexander Dockery was named the 3rd commissioner of the State Commission of Correction on June 4th. Dockery, who was convicted of burglary charges, was granted clemency by Governor Kathy Hochul in December 2023. Blakeman, the Nassau County executive, slammed the decision in a statement, saying Hochul will give you the keys to the prison if you commit a crime in the state. Handling corrections oversight to a convict she personally cut loose is a slap in the face to victims and an absolute betrayal of our corrections officers, Blakeman continued. A spokesperson for the governor's office commended the decision on Friday, June 5th, saying Hochul was proud to nominate him. Alexander Dockery's story is a testament to the power of rehabilitation, earning multiple degrees while incarcerated and dedicating his life to helping others. His personal story and work, both while incarcerated and since his release, will add a powerful voice to the State Commission of Correction, the spokesperson added. The Cattell Center for Equity, Health, and Justice, a group advocating for systemic change in New York, has been vocal about appointing more reform-oriented commissioners, including at least one formerly incarcerated person. In late 2025, Hochul and the state legislature increased the number of SCOC commissioners from 3 to 5 following the correctional facility deaths of Robert Brooks and Basiah Nantwi in recent years, which includes a requirement of at least one being a formerly incarcerated individual. The advocacy group applauded the Senate's decision to appoint Dockery on Thursday, but also called on Hochul to fill the remaining 2 positions. Today's nomination is a critical step in the right direction, and the coalition looks forward to working with Mr. Dockery to ensure the SCOC uses its wide-ranging authority to improve conditions, save lives, and, where necessary, shut down facilities that are out of compliance with state law, the group's statement reads. Blakeman also added he would hire back all the corrections officers Hochul fired on day 1, seemingly referring to the firing of about 2,000 workers connected to the 2025 prison strike. Hochul Campaign Communications Director Serafina Chitika struck back against Blakeman on June 5th with the following statement. Bruce Blakeman is once again proving that his only principle is whatever Donald Trump tells him it is. It's why he gives Trump a pass for pardoning violent, cop-beating insurrectionists, why he had no problem with Trump's billion-dollar slush fund for January 6thers, and why he let violent crime spike to a 10-year high under his watch. Blakeman campaign's AI use raises eyebrows. A state law requiring political campaigns to disclose when they're using materially deceptive media doesn't seem to be stopping the Blakeman campaign from using artificial intelligence in advertisements. Blakeman, along with President Donald Trump and Texas Governor Greg Abbott, have been capitalizing on the New York Knicks playoff run as they have all recently posted Knicks-themed photos and videos of themselves overpowering Hochul in some way, Gothamist's John Campbell reports. Specifically, the Republican gubernatorial candidate's video from last week depicts him in a Knicks jersey stealing the ball from Hochul and New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani before dunking it over Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Additionally, Blakeman posted a South Park-style AI-generated campaign video about green energy mandates featuring the voices of Hochul and Mamdani recreated through the use of AI, reporting by City and State revealed. Several news outlets have said Blakeman's campaign considers these posts to be satire, which is exempt from the state's requirement. However, City and State said a disclaimer wasn't originally included in the green energy mandate video, but was added after the outlet inquired about it. New York State Democratic Party spokesperson Addison Dick criticized the AI-generated advertisements. It's obvious why Bruce Blakeman's campaign is centered around lying and faking. His Trump-first MAGA agenda is toxic, and he knows it, Dick said in a written statement on Friday. AI slop cartoons about your opponent, comparing Trump to your wife, hiring an armed MAGA militia in your backyard. Give it a rest, Bruce. Victor seeks ideas for vacant downtown land. The Village of Victor Urban Renewal Agency wants to hear from residents, business owners, and developers who have ideas on how to shape the future of downtown Victor. After the recent acquisition of 0.82 acres of property at 33 School Street, the agency has passed a resolution to open the floor for letters of interest for the possible development or redevelopment of the agency-owned property. The deadline is June 30th. This open call for ideas will help determine if there is private interest in the property, which is at the intersection of School and Adams Streets, where the types of projects that may be possible there. The property sits behind several West Main Street businesses and near the Victor Farmington Library. The property was identified in the village's urban renewal plan as one to be acquired, and its proximity to Mead Square Park, trails, and downtown businesses make it ideal for a number of public or private uses, according to village trustee Carol Comiso. This request is for information and planning purposes only and is not a request for proposals, an offer to sell or lease the property, or a commitment by the agency to move forward with any private development. Agency officials said the priority is to find a project that generates genuine public excitement and fits the long-term vision of the village. Agency officials reserve the right to reject any or all submissions, request additional information, and end this process at any time. The agency also may issue a more formal request for proposals, negotiate with one or more parties if legally permitted, or retain the property for municipal, public, community, or other purposes determined to be in the best interest of the village. Letters of interest should include a brief description of the proposed project and intended use of the property, if applicable. Include preliminary concept plans or supporting details. If you have any relevant experience, mention that. Interested parties are encouraged to submit letters by email to ptclerk@villageofvictorny.gov or by mail to the Village of Victor Urban Renewal Agency, 60 East Main Street, Victor, New York, 14564. The agency also owns the Village Hall parking lot, Mead Square Park, and the parking lot between the park and the library. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat and Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. U.S. eyes Iranian assets for reconstruction. Threat could jeopardize fragile ceasefire deal. The United States will attempt to redirect Iranian assets to Persian Gulf states for rebuilding and repairs of damage caused by Iran, a source familiar with the matter said, as Tehran followed up a wave of strikes against Kuwait and Bahrain with further drone launches. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has directed a team to assess costs for damage inflicted on Gulf allies by Iran, the source said on June 6th, adding the United States will consider using Iranian assets for repairs of any future destruction as well. The disclosure came a day after Mohsen Rezai, an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, told CNN that a peace deal to end the 3-month-old war hinged on the release of $24 billion in Iranian assets frozen by the United States. The source did not specify what kind of assets the Treasury was examining. The language used to describe the new measures did not appear limited to frozen assets. The threat to redirect Iranian assets could create a new irritant to a fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran, which was tested again this weekend with strikes by both nations. Peace negotiations appear to have stalled, although a minister from mediator Pakistan traveled to Tehran on June 6th with a letter for Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, Iran's semi-official ISNA news agency reported. U.S. forces struck Iranian coastal radar sites in Gorak and Keshem Island, both in the Strait of Hormuz, early on June 5th, after shooting down drones launched by Iran that U.S. Central Command says posed a threat to maritime traffic. 2 more Iranian attack drones that were threatening shipping in the strait were shot down, the U.S. military said late on June 6th. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said it retaliated against U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain, and Kuwait's army said it engaged 7 ballistic missiles that passed over residential areas, resulting in material damage but no casualties. In Bahrain, sirens sounded and residents were urged to seek shelter. Kuwait and Bahrain condemned the strikes. Iran later said it had hit U.S. bases in both countries with ballistic missiles, but the U.S. military said 6 missiles were intercepted and a 7th did not reach its target. OPEC Plus decides on another output hike. The United States and Iran have engaged in largely indirect negotiations for an interim deal to halt the war that would leave issues including Iran's nuclear program to further negotiations. But a deal has remained elusive while the two sides have periodically skirmished. Tehran wants access to billions of dollars in oil revenue, waivers on sanctions on crude exports, the lifting of a U.S. blockade on its ports, and leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has effectively blocked the waterway, where about 1/5 of global oil traffic transited before the war. President Donald Trump is facing mounting domestic political pressure due to rising gas prices to bring the unpopular war to an end. He told NBC that while most of Iran's drone and missile manufacturing facilities had been destroyed, the Iranians still had access to about 1/5 of their missiles. They have some missiles, they have some drones. I would say percentage-wise, maybe 21 to 22% of their missiles. It's a lot of missiles, but it's not what it was when we first attacked, Trump told NBC News' Meet the Press program, according to excerpts released by the network on June 5th. The conflict has driven up oil prices and fueled inflation around the globe. OPEC Plus agreed on June 7th to a 4th increase in oil output targets in as many months, 3 sources in the oil-producing group said, even though the war is still preventing several of the group's members from pumping more. Israeli military strikes Hezbollah. The Israeli military has struck Hezbollah infrastructure in the southern suburbs of the Lebanese capital Beirut, known as Da'iya, the first strike on the militant group's stronghold since an April 16th ceasefire was brokered. The ceasefire has not halted the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, with Israel saying it is working to dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure on its borders. Hezbollah has rejected proposals linking a ceasefire to its disarmament, saying Israel must first halt its attacks and withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon. In a joint statement with his defense minister, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike on Da'iya was ordered in response to Hezbollah firing toward Israeli territory. There were no immediate reports of casualties. The military said earlier it had intercepted 2 projectiles that crossed into Israeli territory from Lebanon after sirens sounded in the areas of Yifta and Ramot Naftali. Hezbollah has not claimed responsibility for the launches. Israel's military also issued an evacuation warning to the residents of the southern Lebanese city of Tyre and its surrounding areas on June 7th ahead of possible strikes. Iran has made a ceasefire in Lebanon between its close ally and Israel a condition for any peace deal with the United States. Hezbollah entered the war on March 2nd, saying it was retaliating for the killing of Iran's supreme leader at the start of a conflict that has since killed thousands in Lebanon and displaced more than 1 million people. Kidnappings spreading beyond northern Nigeria. It was mid-morning when Aduke Balogun noticed a masked man in military fatigues walking toward her children's school. Minutes later, gunfire erupted, more gunmen appeared, and residents fled. In the chaos, her 6-year-old daughter, Faranmi, managed to escape, but another daughter, 8-year-old Kausarat, was not so lucky. One of more than 30 students and a teacher seized and spirited into the bush near Yawota, a town in southwest Nigeria's Oyo state. Videos of kidnapped children are circulating, but Balogun cannot bear to watch, and it is unclear if they are from her children's Baptist nursery and primary school. "Every day I pray and hope for their safe return," she said, as she manned a stall selling soft drinks, bread, and biscuits across the road from the school. The May 15th raid and simultaneous attacks on 2 other nearby schools have jolted a region long seen as relatively safe compared to more unstable regions further north, fueling fears that kidnapping for ransom gangs are expanding their operations far beyond traditional hotspots. Widespread kidnappings and the ever-expanding presence of armed groups across Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, are likely to be key issues in the run-up to Nigeria's next national elections in January. Nigeria's government has struggled for years to tackle insecurity, ranging from herder-farmer conflicts across its center to mix of bandits, Islamist militants, and community defense militia that operate across northern states. Amid the violence, armed groups frequently kidnap motorists, clerics, and school children, holding them until ransom payments are made. SBM Intelligence said kidnappers collected at least $1.89 million in ransom payments in Nigeria in the year to June 2025. At the LA primary school, 3 miles from where Balogun's child was seized, one teacher was shot dead as he tried to escape through a classroom window during another attack, said Lamidi Wahid, a teacher in the school. In the third raid, 6 teachers and 7 students were kidnapped from the nearby community high school in Ahoro SNL, Wahid added. Fearing the insecurity and lacking mobile phone networks to call for help, many who live in farming communities in Oyo's Oraya district, about 186 miles northeast of Lagos, have fled, local chief Tajuddin Abiyoye told Reuters. When he came to power 3 years ago, President Bola Tinubu pledged, like his predecessors, to tackle insecurity. However, the Oyo attack, along with the kidnapping of 42 school children last month in insurgency-hit northeast Borno state, have intensified scrutiny of Tinubu's security record ahead of the 2027 elections. Tinubu will seek re-election and is likely to enter the race as a favorite as the opposition, led by challengers Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi, remains divided. However, worsening security could weigh on his chances. No group has claimed responsibility for the Oyo attacks, but the military has blamed Boko Haram, Islamist militants, which usually operate in the Northeast. Are dogs required to be buckled up? If you're planning to bring your dog along on a road trip, it's important to know what's allowed and what's safest when traveling with pets in New York. While it is generally legal to transport a dog in a vehicle in New York, safety experts say allowing a pet to roam freely inside a moving car can create risks for both the animal and the driver. New York does not have a statewide law requiring dogs to wear seatbelts, harnesses, or ride in carriers while traveling in a vehicle. However, drivers can still be cited for offenses such as distracted driving or reckless driving if a police officer determines an unrestrained pet contributed to unsafe driving. The New York State Department of Motor Vehicles recommends securing pets while traveling. In its driver's manual, the DMV advises motorists to properly secure pets in a pet carrier or portable kennel. You must pay attention to the driving task, the manual states. You are responsible for operating your vehicle in a safe manner. In 2024, a bill was introduced in the state Senate that would have prohibited transporting dogs in the bed of a pickup truck or in other cargo areas of vehicles. Supporters said the measure was intended to reduce the risk of dogs being injured or ejected during crashes. The proposal did not become law. The American Veterinary Medical Association says unrestrained pets can distract drivers and face a greater risk of injury during a crash. Large dogs can be injured by deploying airbags, while smaller pets may be thrown from their seats or suffer serious injuries in a collision. The Humane Society of the United States recommends transporting dogs in a secured crate or carrier anchored to the vehicle or using a crash-tested pet harness. Experts also advise keeping pets out of the front seat to reduce the risk of injury from airbags. Hotline fielded questions about boat strikes. Attacks have killed over 200 since September. The U.S. military has killed more than 200 people in strikes on boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific in the last 9 months, in what legal experts and former military lawyers broadly agree constitute illegal military orders that service members should refuse to follow. While there is no record of troops refusing to follow these orders, at least a handful of service members grappling with these questions have sought legal advice, according to anonymous hotlines for U.S. military members. Before the Trump-era boat strikes, the United States viewed the drug trade as a law enforcement issue and tasked the Coast Guard with interdicting boats trying to bring drugs into the country. Since then, the Trump administration has released no evidence that any of the suspected narco-trafficking boats carried drugs or that their occupants worked for drug cartels. It has never identified the people it killed, just a handful of names have been published in news reports. Family members also filed a federal lawsuit naming their relatives whom they allege were murdered by the United States. The military has published dozens of videos of the attacks on social media, grainy black and white videos taken from above of boats speeding through the water before they explode into balls of flame. And Trump officials continue to say the attacks are lawful. At a June 2nd Senate budget hearing, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said every boat strike has a legal officer on the deck that has to make a determination about whether the call is legal or not. The Pentagon referred USA Today's questions to U.S. Southern Command, which oversees military operations in South America and the Caribbean. The command said in a statement, "All operations are conducted deliberately and lawfully in full compliance with U.S. and international law, including the law of armed conflict. All targeting criteria are developed according to legal, operational, and intelligence requirements," the statement said. Since the first strike on September 2, 2025, scores of legal experts and former military lawyers have characterized the strikes as extrajudicial killings or murders. Members of the military are required by U.S. law to refuse illegal orders. Dan Maurer, a retired Army lieutenant, colonel, and former military lawyer, said he hoped the boat strikes would serve as an example for future generations. It's going to be a shameful episode in the history of American military operations, and I hope it becomes a case study in what not to do, he said. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat and Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Legal hotlines get calls. Two organizations that provide anonymous legal advice for military members grappling with orders they fear are illegal said they have received calls from service members concerned about the legality of the boat strikes, some from people directly involved in them. Steve Wolford, a resource counselor with Quaker House and the GI Rights Hotline, said he spoke with about 4 service members involved in the operation who were seeking legal and ethical guidance. One discussed helping plan a strike, and 2 others were ordered to execute strikes, he said. I think this is exactly what was described as a war crime, Wolford said, one caller told him. Wolford said some of these callers were connected to lawyers, but he wasn't aware of anyone who had refused an order or taken legal action. Callers are more scared now that they'd be punished if they did bring something up, he said. If a service member refuses to follow an order, the case may be brought before a military judge to determine if the order was lawful. However, before that call is made, service members could be removed from duty immediately. Ethical concerns heightened. The simmering concerns surrounding the boat strikes boiled over following news reports that the first ever boat strike in September left 2 survivors that the military killed in a second double-tap strike about 40 minutes later. The Pentagon has refused to publicly release footage of that second strike. Lawmakers who viewed it in a classified setting called it deeply disturbing. What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service, U.S. Representative Jim Himes of Connecticut, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, said after viewing it. You have 2 individuals in clear distress, without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed by the United States, he said. International law prohibits killing adversaries who are wounded or have already surrendered. However, many experts say the strikes can't be considered war crimes because the Trump administration's case that it is at war with drug cartels does not stand up to scrutiny. Maurer, the retired lieutenant colonel, said he found it highly improbable that a future administration would prosecute service members involved, both because of the broad popularity of the military and a lack of appetite in Washington to pursue what would resemble a retribution campaign. I don't think criminal accountability is going to happen, he said. The mother and sister of Chad Joseph and Rishi Shamaru, 2 Trinidadian men whose families say they were killed in an October 14th boat strike, have sued the United States government for damages over the wanton, willful, and outrageous killings, according to a complaint filed in January. And relatives of Alejandro Carranza Medina, a Colombia man who was killed in a September strike, filed a formal complaint with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in December, seeking compensation. Nation's pork producers urge renewal of trade agreement. Continuing the U.S. trade agreement with Mexico and Canada, the nation's 2 largest agricultural trading partners, is critical for American farmers, say producers, economists, and others attending the World Pork Expo in Des Moines. Citing ongoing trade turmoil, rising prices, and farmers' continued financial struggles, farm group leaders at the expo urged the Trump administration to renew the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which is slated for review in July. It's been wildly successful, Julie Kenney, CEO of the Agribusiness Association of Iowa, said during a roundtable discussion at the expo, held June 3rd to 4th at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. The event annually draws some 10,000 pork producers and ag professionals from around the world to Iowa, the nation's leading pork producer. The review of the agreement comes as U.S. cattle producers are seeing strong returns, but producers of corn, soybeans, and other crops are facing a 4th year of potential losses. At the same time, pork producers are trying to dig out from deep losses in 2023 and 2024. Rob Brenneman, a Southeast Iowa pork producer and National Pork Producers Council board president, said during an Expo news conference that the challenges of trade and tariffs have been big. The U.S.-Iran war is driving up fertilizer and fuel prices at a time when costs for crop inputs already were rising, Brenneman said. The price of everything just keeps going up, he said. President Donald Trump's barrage of tariffs and trade disagreements helped push the U.S. farm trade deficit to $40.7 billion in 2025, an increase of 12% over 2024. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which Trump signed into law in 2020 during his first term, provided a rare bright spot amid the turmoil. Mexico, which spent $30.6 billion on U.S. farm goods in 2025, was the top foreign buyer of corn, pork, and dairy products, and the second largest buyer of soybeans. Canada followed at $28.2 billion and was the largest buyer of eggs and ethanol, and the fourth largest buyer of pork and beef, U.S. Department of Agriculture data shows. The USMCA not only gives us preferential market access and zero tariffs to both countries, it has helped with the integration of our supply chains, making sure that we can be very competitive in a global economy, Maria Zieba, the National Pork Producer Council's Vice President of Government Affairs, said during a news conference. Altogether, the United States exported $8.4 billion in pork in 2025, with Mexico buying about a third of the total. Participants in a Farmers for Free Trade roundtable discussion at the expo said the USMCA works and politicians should do no harm. If you can take the politics out of the room, the buyers and sellers of the products want to do business, said Randy Miller, a Central Iowa farmer and an American Soybean Association board member. He added that if we can keep the politicians in step with where we need to be, it will be a huge difference. Trump met with China's President Xi Jinping in May, an indication that trade tensions are easing. Amid tropical lull, forecasters warn storms can form quickly. 1 week into Atlantic hurricane season, forecasters see few signs of any tropical activity, but they say it's worth staying alert. Overall, while June is typically a slow month for hurricane activity, the storms that do form can spring up fast and furious close to U.S. shores. Instead of watching tropical waves cross the entire Atlantic Ocean for a week or more, which often happens later in the season, AccuWeather hurricane expert Alex De Silva said, early storms are usually the result of spin developing off of cold fronts, moving south, dips in the jet stream moving over warm ocean water, or clusters of showers and storms that develop, spin, and move north from Central America. Most of these storms usually move toward the northeast Gulf Coast and Carolinas early in the month, and then the western Gulf can be impacted later in the month. June hurricanes are pretty rare, De Silva said in an email. On average, a June hurricane happens around every 5 years or so, but this can vary. He said that the most recent June hurricane to form was Beryl in 2024, and the last June hurricane to hit the United States was Bonnie in 1986. This storm made landfall east of Houston, killing 5 people. Michael Lowry, hurricane specialist with WPLG-TV in Miami, said in a Substack post that only once in the record books has a tropical cyclone formed east of the Caribbean islands in the first few weeks of June. Tropical Depression 2 in 2003 that didn't even survive a full 24 hours, which means we generally have less time to prepare when early season storms threaten. June is historically the least active month of the 6-month hurricane season, according to Lowry. He said the storms that do form tend to stay on the weaker side. Only 3 Category 3 or stronger hurricanes have ever been recorded in June. Audrey, 1957, Alma, 1966, and Beryl, 2024. And typically, it's rainfall and flooding, not strong winds, that are the hallmarks of these early bloomers, Lowry said. Hurricanes are hard to form in June because of several reasons, De Silva said. One, the sea surface temperatures are cooler during this time as compared to the middle of hurricane season. Wind shear is also usually strong and widespread. The other factor is June usually has a lot of dry, dusty air that crosses the Atlantic from Africa. This dry and dusty air can choke out developing tropical storms. European scientists from the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service said in early June that a large plume of Saharan dust had made its way across the ocean and was impacting islands in the Caribbean Sea with hazy skies and degraded air quality. While later season hurricanes are often tracked for thousands of miles through every stage of development, early season storms are more likely to spring up right off the coast of the U.S. It's during the opening weeks of the season, especially, that formations happen closer to home in the Western Caribbean, Gulf, and off the southeast U.S., Lowry said. De Silva said most of the time, development early in the season is not associated with the tropical waves that are typically seen later in the year. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Monday, June 8th issue of the Democrat Chronicle. Your reader has been Jackie Cohen. Thank you for listening.